Okay, so let's go to Mark chapter 8 tonight. Verse 14, this is after Jesus feeds 4,000. How many people? Wrong. They only count dudes for some reason, so 4,000 dudes and then other people. It was. So he just does this incredible miracle, and the Pharisees come to him right after and say, hey, show us a sign. And that's kind of like an awkward moment. It's like, were you not there? You know, 7 loaves or something like that. I can't remember the count on that particular story, but it's just like 4,000 plus women and children are fed, so there you go. I'm not going to give you a sign. You got to pay attention. And this is what happens right after this. So this is Mark chapter 8, verse 14. The disciples have forgotten to bring bread, except for one loaf they had with them in the boat. I read that, and I was like, I had to contemplate on that one for a little bit. Wait a minute. They got one loaf of bread between 13 of them. You know? Like, who is smuggling bread? Seriously. They just fed 4,000 with a few loaves, and some dude has to hang on to a loaf of bread and keep it in the boat. Like, that loaf of bread ain't going to do nothing. I was like, why do they have that loaf of bread? Does that frustrate you in that story? Whatever. All right, verse 15. Be careful, Jesus warned them. Watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees and that of Herod. They discussed this with one another and said, it's because we have no bread. They have a loaf of bread. Whew, they're confused. Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked them, why are you talking about having no bread? You have a loaf of bread. Oh, anyway, yeah. Are your hearts hardened? And do you have eyes but fail to see, and ears but fail to hear? Yeah, and don't you remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000? How many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up? 12, they replied. And when I broke the 7 loaves of the 4,000, how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up? They said 7. He said to them, do you still not understand? Do you still not understand? I feel bad for the disciples, you know? And honestly, like I fit in very well with the disciples. I was like, Jesus, what are you talking about? I don't understand. The reason why they don't understand is because they're not even close to the same point of view on Jesus on a lot of things. On many things, they just do not have the perspective of heaven. They do not have the perspective of God. They do not have the perspective of Jesus. And Jesus is talking, he's not talking about bread. He's talking about the influence of the system that they live in that day. Beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and that of Herod, right? It's beware of the influence that's around you all the time. And like immediately they get their minds off of loaves of bread. Like it's baffling. But at the same time, I think that I would very much be in the same position of going, what are you talking about, Jesus? And I think a lot of us are in that same position of just, what are you talking about, Jesus? I think I know. I'll hang around with you for a little bit and see what's going on, but what are you talking about? And you know, what I want to talk about a lot tonight is just about the culture that we find ourselves in and the particular lenses by which we assimilate information, because we assimilate information every moment of the day. And it all comes through, it flows through our experience, doesn't it? Like experience will shape the way that you receive information. And so here's these disciples, and they're obviously grown up in a culture that's very much decided by the Pharisees and Herod. Would you agree with this? And here comes Jesus, who's not influenced by those things whatsoever. And so Jesus is talking about something that these guys have no lens to actually see this thing through. And so when Jesus talks to us, it's almost the same way, isn't it? He'll start to speak to us, but we have no lens to see him through. And we have a hard time picking up what he's throwing down. Like he's talking about yeast of the Pharisees, and they start talking about this loaf that they smuggled in their boat for some reason. You know? It's because we have no bread. It's like, what? You know, it's so confusing that we just do not understand Jesus when he speaks, do we? We have a perspective here in North America where there's an American perspective, and like there would be other perspectives within the world, and when they start to communicate with each other, they don't mesh at all. And it's kind of like what's happening in this story right here, right? Just like, could you imagine what it would be like to be in India in the caste system, where you're the lowest ring on the totem pole, or whatever you call it there, you know, where you're the lowest caste in that system, where you can't really even have the right to be educated. You can't ever get out of your thing. You're born into just an absolute craziness of dysfunction and oppression, if you will, right? Everybody with me on that one? Like, what they value and what they go after and what is important to them is not even anywhere close to what the American system would hold. You know what I mean? So that's the thing of worldview that we have around here. There's an American worldview. There's a Southeast Asia worldview that we do not understand, right? They could give a rip about a house and a car. They could give a rip about a career. What they give a rip about is what is going to feed their belly this moment. We don't really care about that stuff. Not to the degree that they do. And there's a bit of a perception here that we have to get. There's a worldview that Jesus brings to us that we absolutely do not understand. We do know that he's good. We do know that he shows up, like he just showed up tonight. We do know that he's alive, amen? But we don't quite know what that means, do we? Because our worldview needs to be shifted and changed. And let me tell you something, that your worldview is not going to be shifted and changed in a worship service. Your worldview is not going to be shifted and changed in a matter of listening to this sermon, right? It's true. All the things, the cultural things that we do are not going to be shifted, our perception of who Jesus really is. Because here's the deal, is that right after this awkward sequence where all that's pointed out here is that the disciples have no clue what Jesus is talking about, even though he's in the boat with them. And he's telling them, this is important, you got to listen to this. And they say, what are you talking about? Toast? No, they're not talking about toast. They're talking about something that's completely way more relevant to their moment of their lives right there, where it's the yeast of the fair, the influence that's around you right now. And the story flows into Mark chapter 8, verse 27. Yes, it does. And this is what the story goes. Jesus and his disciples went to the villages around Caesarea Philippi. There you go. On the way, he asked them, who do people say that I am? They replied, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others one of the prophets. But what about you, he asked. Who do you say that I am? All he is doing here is kind of testing the worldview that they're coming at him with, right? How do you perceive the information that's coming at you right now? Have you seen the miracle of bread? Yes. How are you receiving that information? Must be John the prophet. Must be Elijah. Must be a prophet that's come down from long ago. That's weird. This is all the way that we're assimilating this information because the lens that they were looking at stuff through. Jesus is testing, are you getting what I'm throwing down right now? And then he takes it to a way more personal level, what we got to pick up. What is the personal level that he's meeting you at? Who do you say that I am? Can you cut through the cultural garbage around you and actually get to the real deal of who I am? You've seen the miracles. You've seen who I am. You've seen me demonstrate my holiness, my deity, my goodness. You've seen me. Now, how does that translate in your life? And Peter, he's smart, isn't he? Did we read this part yet? Maybe not. And Peter answered him, you are the Christ. Good answer, Peter. And that's my translation, is Christ. What he actually says is Messiah. And Messiah, what the word Messiah actually means, is anointed king. That's a big deal to a Jewish audience. That's a big deal when you're reading this thing, that you actually read that word Messiah, the anointed king is here. That's the promised one from a long time ago, the one that is actually going to take the place of rule and authority. And Peter, as a good Jewish dude, says, you are the one we've been waiting for. I've seen everything that's going on. I recognize you as the anointed king. You are who you say that you are, right? But Peter, just like Peter does, just goes ahead and steps in it, doesn't it? Because we know this story, don't we? Yeah? Because here's what happens. It's like after Jesus asks this question and Peter answers so awesome, he goes, cool, I'm going to give you another bit to actually change your worldview here, to change the lens that we're looking through, because we've gotten this far. But let's just take it a little bit farther now. You guys all right with this? We're going to take it just a little bit farther. And he blows Peter's mind right now with what he's about to say, right? They get to have this little awkward discussion right now. Verse 31, he then began to teach them all that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. That was his big speech after, yeah, that's right, I am the Christ. Check it out. Gonna die. See, that was nowhere part of a good Pharisee teaching on what the Messiah was going to be. Beware of the yeast of the Pharisees. Beware of what is going to start to shape your culture. It is coming at you. Check it out. I am the Christ. You're right. Check it out. I'm going to go die. See what Jesus is doing here? He's trying to challenge Peter's worldview, his perception of truth, his perception of who he thinks that Jesus really is. Okay, check it out. This is what's going to happen. Jesus says this 3 times, and they'd believe him 0 times. This is the first time Jesus drops this nugget on them. Hey, check it out. Gonna go, die, 3 days, rise again. Cool? Plan? Let's go? Right? Peter's like having none of this plan, is he? Verse 32. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. How many times have we done that? Have we said, my idea, Jesus, is way better than yours? Jesus, I don't think that that's what the prophecy says. Oh, Jesus, sorry, man. You missed it, right? You missed it. Is he talking about bread? You know, like, Jesus. Jesus, I've read the scriptures. I've read the Old Testament, right? I'm a good Jewish scholar. I know the story, and that's not the way it goes, Jesus. Do I need to remind you that's not the way this thing goes, Jesus? Like we got to have an honest assessment here of just the amount of times that we rebuke Jesus for being Jesus. And he's leading us into places that we don't understand. And we go, that's not the way we roll, man. I thought this is about getting houses and cars and families and happiness and lollipops and rosebuds and unicorns. And all right? I thought this was about peace, God bringing me peace. I thought this was about love and love everlasting. I thought this was about all this crazy stuff that doesn't even have a word in this thing right here. Now, Jesus, come on. Let me rebuke you for a minute for saying something that's completely against my worldview. And like, I've never had my worldview changed in a worship service. I've never had my worldview changed in a sermon. I've never had a worldview changed in a teaching class. I've never had my worldview shifted and changed by something that agrees with the culture that's around me. I've only had my worldview changed when I decided to rebuke Jesus. That's not the way this thing goes, Jesus. And then we know the famous line he's going to drop on Peter right now, right? You know, he says, "Get behind me, Satan. You don't know the things of God. You only care about the things of man." I've never had my worldview changed in a worship service. What I have had in a worship service is knowing that he's with me. That he hasn't given up on me yet. That he's in the boat speaking to me of yeast, and I'm still talking about bread. That he's still in the boat with me. Does that make sense? Yeah. I'm a mess today. I don't know why. I do know why. I just don't want to tell you. It's just I see people that, okay, I don't know how to tell you this, so help me, Jesus. It's a matter of watching people not wanting their worldviews to get screwed up, just absolutely planting on I am right, you are wrong, get out of my face. I'm not talking about any individual in this place. Don't worry about it, guys. I saw this place that I love blab on and on and on about what's going to happen in the future, and I just cried. I don't know how much I should share with that, but you got to know where I'm at with this stuff. And I'm reading this stuff today and just going, it's plain as day. I don't really know how you don't get this. But then at the same time, I'm in the boat with them, talking about bread. I heard the future of our movement is going to be just on standing still. That's what I heard today. Like that is just 100% just a solidification of my worldview is right. Jesus ain't getting in on this one. We are right because he shows up in a worship service. We are right because he moves on us in a powerful way. We're going to keep going after this, and I hear about wineskins and old wine and new wine, and if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about right now. And it was devastating to me. I sat at lunch watching this thing and crying in my house alone. Why don't we just follow Jesus? Why don't we just allow him to take us by the throat sometimes and say, get behind me, Satan. You care about the things of the world. You don't know the things of God. I met Jesus in 2001. He was real, and I follow him. I wasn't real good at following him, but it was a worldview-changing moment of my life. I've had 4 milestone moments of my life. Number 1 is when I met Jesus. Changed everything. It is now his way, not my way. Second milestone moment is when I met Stephanie. My life is now poured out for somebody else. Absolute world-changing, worldview-changing moment of my life. Third one, milestone moment of my life, worldview-shaping moment of my life, is when Heinz put his boot in my rear. Stephanie's grandfather trained me as a cabinet maker, and he made me a man, is what he did. Worldview changing moment of my life. The fourth one is when I met Steve Orsillo and his family. Worldview changing event of my life. I've had 4. Not one of them was in a worship service. Not one of them was listening to a guy on a microphone. It was a decision to do something different with my life. The first one is when I met Jesus, and Jesus, I'm after you. Knowing that I would lose friends, knowing that I would lose my future, knowing that my life would never be the same. And I just cannonballed into the deep end on that one. I'm with you, Jesus. Submission and surrender define that moment of my life. Obviously, Mary and Stephanie, it's submission and surrender. That's what a good relationship looks like. A worldview changing moment of my life. All of these moments of my life, guys, is when I've met Jesus, saw Jesus, he's moved me to an area, and I just decided to submit and surrender to whatever he said. Obviously, with Heinz, it was the same deal, man. Most of you know my Heinz story, so I'm not going to tell them, but it was one of those moment that defined my life when he just got in my face, pointing a finger at my nose and saying, "Get with it, son. You're better than this. You're better than you ever thought you could be. And I'm not going to let you off the hook with your weakness. Get it straight, son." It was a worldview changing moment of my life, where I thought I had it all together, and I had to submit and surrender to what God was doing in my life. I'll follow this man. And that was a monumental moment of my life. I will follow you, Jesus. If this is where you've brought me, I will follow you, Jesus. I met Steve Orsillo in Toronto, in the upper room of the mezzanine thing there, where they were doing an intern fair. I just remember talking to Steve. Just something refreshing about what he was telling me, you know? They sent me here on a team, saw that what was going on around here. I was a confused little boy, man, when I showed up here. I don't know where I am right now. Somewhat less confused. Kind of a bigger boy. I don't know. Yeah. But those moments of just, I will follow. I will change. I'll allow my worldview to be changed. I don't know everything, but I think I do. And those moments of submission and surrender have changed my life. And it's just submitting to the lordship of Jesus. God, I'm with you. I don't give a rip about a next move. I care about right now with you. Who do you say that I am, Geordie? You're the Christ of God, the Messiah. Well, let me tell you something. You're going to lose everything you have. I didn't sign up for this, but I'm with you. Shall we continue to read what he says? I don't know if you're familiar with this passage at all. It's in the 3 Gospels. It lays out exactly the same in all 3 Gospels. John doesn't have this story. I think because he likes to beg on Peter. I kind of left this one out. So what he says right after this, he says, "Get behind me." I didn't read this part to you because I said it. But verse 33, let's just kind of review. "But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. 'Get behind me, Satan,' he said. 'You do not have in mind the things of God, but the things of men.' Then he called the crowd to him." He's going to beat on the crowd right now, guys. He's going to beat on this crowd. And I want us to just put yourself in the position of Jesus. Go, "Hey, guys, come here." Jesus calling you. And just put yourself in the crowd right now. Jesus, you're following Jesus. You were with him for 3 days. He just fed you a whole bunch of food, right, as you're hungry. He's running away from you on the boat and all this crazy stuff, and they find him again, and he's calling the crowd to him after he just rips Peter, "Get behind me, Satan," and he calls the crowd to him, and he drops this little nug on him. Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, if anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for a man to gain the whole world yet forfeit his soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of him when he comes in his glory and all the holy angels. Just imagine that as a nice little sermon, right? What do you do with that? What do you do with that? I've got to change my perception of who Jesus is. I have to become more understanding of who he really is. Because that don't preach no more, does it? What is your worldview? With what perception do you come at Jesus with? In some movements, man, that doesn't fit, does it? Because the lenses are so skewed. Like, that's exactly who Jesus is. Beware of the yeast of the Pharisees. They got some crazy thinkers. They're going to destroy your culture. Come with me. I got life for you. Come on, this is how you find your life. You got to lose it. Come on, let's go. Anybody want to find their life? Who do people say that I am? Who do you say that I am? Well, you're the Christ of God. You're the anointed king. Cool, come on, let's go die. What a weird speech, isn't it? It's weird because we don't have the proper worldview of Jesus. We don't have the proper kingdom perspective. And what we do is have to bow our knees, submit, and surrender. So our worldview can actually be shifted and changed. The worldview has to be able to see what Jesus has given us here. Like, check out this, what he says, right? If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Do you know how many times I've heard that verse right there changed? Well, he doesn't really mean the cross. He really doesn't mean that. He doesn't really mean this. Well, your cross could be several things in your life. You know, no, what he says is actually like, embrace the call to death is what that means. Embrace the call to death. If anyone would come after me, he must pick up his cross, embrace his call for death, and follow me. It doesn't fit, does it? So what are we going to do? I suggest that we bow our knee on this one and go, I don't understand, but I'm with you. Who do you say that I am? Remember, this is where this whole conversation started, right? Who do you say that I am? Oh, you're the Messiah. Then come and do these things with me. If you're the Messiah, then I'll bow my knee before you. And I'll go with you. Does your perception need to be changed? Does your worldview need to be adjusted? Will we allow Jesus to change our worldview? Will you allow Jesus to change your worldview? It comes first with the acknowledgement that God is with us. God, you are here. I've never changed my worldview in a worship service. Are you guys with me on this one? I have never changed my worldview off of a sermon. I've only changed my worldview when it has been absolutely challenged in front of me. You got a choice to make, son. And you have to embrace these moments when they come at you, because Jesus is leading you into this moment of going, who are you going to believe? The yeast of the Pharisees or the Christ of God? Pick up your cross and follow me. This is a call to death. You know that you're going to lose stuff when you say yes to Jesus. Am I right? You know that there's going to be a cost when you follow Jesus. You know that there's going to be something that is going to be lost when you say yes to Jesus. But are you willing to pay the price? Are you willing to actually suffer the loss to see if Jesus is who he actually says that he is? Will you allow Jesus to be Jesus in your life? Not the fairy tale Jesus, but the Jesus who meets you face to face. Will you allow him to be Jesus in your life? Will you allow the Christ of God to actually be Christ of your life? Will you allow your worldview to be torn down and his life live through you? I think we need to do some soul searching. I really do. I was fairly crushed this afternoon. Disappointed. The wind was taken out of my sails a little bit more. I was like, what are we doing? Can't we just follow Jesus? Can't we just follow Jesus? I'm going to kick it up a notch just a little bit. Individual level, we have to see this, the perception that we have, our perception of who we think Jesus really is and where he's leading us. But how fancy are our plans, Father's house? What about the plans for the Father's house? Are they God's plans? Or are they our plans? What about your family? What about our family? Are they God's plans? Are they my plans? He says, pick up your cross and follow me. Okay. Okay. How fancy are our plans? Does Jesus fit into your plans? Is it him, number one? Is he the Christ of God? Is he the anointed king? Well, if he's the anointed king, let's bow our knee and say, it's your deal, man. Let her rip. This is something that gets me all the time, and I'm not real good at this. I'm learning just like everybody else. You know, with my school of ministry, it's the same thing, man. I got great plans for it. I got my dream of doing this and blah, 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 right? It doesn't really matter nothing. Every time it's just bow my knees. Like, it's yours. It's yours. It's your plan. Sometimes I care about the things of man way more than I care about the things of God. And I got to get my worldview shifted and changed, yeah? Yeah. I want us to go where God is going. These guys, they were just gut punched. And sometimes it takes a bit of a gut punch to get your worldview shifted and changed, doesn't it? Sometimes it's it's those moments like you're rebuking Jesus. Did you really send me to the Father's house? Is this really what we're supposed to be doing right now, Jesus? You do realize I got no money, right? You do realize I live in a board-out house, right? Is this the plan? I see other people up the road, they're getting just, they're driving $300,000 cars. Did I miss it somewhere? I don't even know what to say anymore. No, the problem is I do know what to say. I just don't want to say it. But I think we just need to allow ourselves to have a moment with Jesus. Just go, are my plans your plans? Is my great idea your great idea? If it's your idea, then let's rip. If this involves crosses, then bust out the nails. Because I'm with you. If this involves losing stuff, then bust out the trash cans. Because I'm with you. Whose worldview do you want to pick up, man? What yeast do you want to be leavened by? Influenced by? Good stuff, huh? Like I said, your worldview is not going to get changed tonight. It's not. It's when you come face to face with your house leader. It's when you come face to face with your spouse. It's when you come face to face with the ministry leader, perhaps. Your boss, your brother, your sister. It's those moments where am I going really? It's when your parents challenge you again. What are you doing with your life? Those are the worldview shifting moments. Exactly. When we get those awful things happening in our lives, man. God, who are you? Confusing things that are happening. Did I sign up for this? Jesus, let me tell you how this should roll. Come on now. You don't care about the things of God. You care about the things of man. Whoo, we need some of that stuff in our lives, don't we? Don't we? Best thing that ever happened to me was those 4 milestone moments. Some of the worst things that ever happened to me was in those 4 milestone moments. Let me tell you, you learn about selfishness when you get married, boys. Those humiliating, humbling moments happen when you just allow God to be Christ of your life. Just like Peter allowed Jesus to be Christ of his life. You are Christ. You are the Messiah. Yeah, Peter's, tripped over his own shoelaces a couple of times, but he always reset himself, right? To, I'm with you. He had a moment on the beach, I'm with you. He had Acts chapter 2, I'm with you. He had Acts chapter 4, I'm with you. Look it up in your Bibles. Those are all good stuff, right? Those are just I'm with you moments. You are Christ. I'm with you. He allowed himself, his perception to be changed because of who Jesus showed himself to be. We've all seen people get fed. I'm going to use the old quotation, right? We've seen the 4,000 fed in this place, haven't we? The miracles of God. We have seen the miracles of God. The miracles of God get to sit in the same room as us on a consistent basis, and we still question if God is who he says that he is. But who do you say that I am? You're the Christ of God. I've seen it, man. Well, check it out. It's going to be awful. It's going to be crazy. No. That's not the way it rolls, Jesus. Get behind me, Satan. This is how it's going to roll. If you want to pick up your cross, you will be my disciple. Let's go. Will you allow your worldview to be shifted and changed? Will you allow this into your life? I don't really, it's not really a rah altar call right now. Woo, right? Let's go embrace death. Yay. But at the same time, it's like, who's God, man? Who's God? Who will you allow Jesus to be Christ of your life? So the big question is, right? Who do you say he is? We have felt his presence, haven't we? We have felt his pleasure, haven't we? Yes. What is your conclusion on those things? Jesus is with us. Okay, if Jesus is with you, who do you say that he is? I don't know, that's for you to answer, man. But if you answer he's the Messiah, then are you with him? Are you with him? Not based on your own expectations and perceptions, but on what he says. And your expectations to be shifted and changed. What do you say, church? Yes? Yeah? No? I don't care. Whatever. Just, will you run into this thing with me? Will you run this road? It's going to get rough. It's like there's going to be some pouty faces. There's going to be some tears, man. But there's going to be some joy, knowing that you're okay with it.